In Victorian days, women's place was in the house.
Women campaigned for the right to vote.
Things haven't changed a bit since Mama's day.
Why should the woman always cook, and why she should always, wash dishes? Men could do that.
She had only the narrowest opportunities if she was to remain respectable.
Well, I'm not belonging to it.
That's all right.
I'm very sorry I don't like it.
Hundreds of years ago, there were so many matriarchal countries and societies that were either led by women or at least had the same rights for both men and women. So I've always had this perception that we as humans get more and more progressive as time goes on, which is true for the most part. But then naturally, I also assume that as we go back into the past, you see more backward views and more injustices and inequalities, which is kind of not true. That's what I'm going to be talking about here in this video. This video is about how European colonizers systematically normalized patriarchy, or even introduced it in some places where it just was not a thing. It's not that the world was a progressive feminist haven before colonization. It's just that it was a bit more diverse in many places regarding the rights of women and their place in society. And most of the times it was a more equal, fair, and more just system than what the colonizers brought. But before talking about the actual laws and the injustices that the European colonizers enforced all over the world, I want to talk about this one thing that's very, very hard to grasp because of how ingrained it is in our heads. A big part of what colonization did in a lot of places was introducing a hard, rigid line between what men and women are supposed to act like. Like the idea that they're supposed to act different. Like how we see it today, like men and women are supposed to wear different things, talk in different ways, walk, eat, laugh, and even like different things. They also introduced this difference between men and women as a social category. Men and women are supposed to have certain roles in society and they can't cross over to each other's fields. So as an example, in the Yoruba society, none of this was a thing. Oyeronke Oyeyumi describes in her book that gender, as we understand it now, was not the organizing factor in the Yoruba society. It wasn't a clear, hard societal class as we see it today, which I want you to understand, gender was not seen as a differentiating factor between two people. Like it didn't represent anything how they were supposed to act or what they were supposed to do, aside from their body parts. No matter your gender, you could become a farmer, a cook, or a soldier. Even their language didn't differentiate in that at all.
We don't have a word for brother or sister. You say my older sibling or my younger sibling. People don't say my son, my daughter, they say my child, my offspring.
It was also very similar in a lot of Native American societies. The gender roles were way more fluid, and they also had the concept of two-spirited people. I'm simplifying it a little bit by using the term two-spirited, but historically different tribes had different words for it and different meanings and different roles. But essentially gender wasn't a strict biological thing, it was more of a social role. Like something you do rather than something you are biologically. And then there were people who had a bit of both, masculinity and femininity, and those were the people that were called the two-spirited people. They often held respectable positions as healers or mediators or spiritual leaders. They were an essential part of how society worked. And then the European colonized, of course, and then they put a hard, rigid line between what's male and what's female, and anything outside of that was immoral and sinful and just bad. Oh, and also illegal. In India, they even criminalized intersex and trans people, who were actually pretty widely accepted in society before this. The British made laws like the Criminal Code 377, which states whoever voluntarily has carnal intercourse against the order of nature with any man or woman or animal shall be punished. Which, okay, yeah, the animal part is fair, but the rest was a new thing. And it not only affected gay people, but again, it also affected intersex and trans people. They were often harassed or surveilled or threatened, even if there's no proof of them having any sexual activity that goes against this code. And more than that, they started to be considered deviants, which really messed it up for them in society. I want to clarify, again, I'm not saying that past before colonization was some progressive utopia. It's just that there were different ways of organizing society, different better ways, I would say, fairer, more just ways of organizing it. But then after colonization, it all just got leveled by one of them, which wasn't a very good one. Okay, this video is not about gender being a spectrum, so let's focus more on women now.
When you have the power, it might be easy to laugh. If you think of discrimination against people because they're black, or because they're women, or because they're poor, they're satisfactory to stick around.
I read so much researching for this video, and I feel like literally everything I'm about to talk about, it's so frustrating. And that's honestly the main reason I'm making this video, to put all of that into a small, digestible, understandable video. Maybe consider subscribing if you'd like to see more of these style of videos. So it's around the 12th century, and people both in the Philippines and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy have a matriarchal structure. Women have all kinds of rights. In the Philippines, they're entitled to property, to engage in trade, and in the absence of a male heir, take the position of the village chief. Women are also powerful and esteemed high priestesses and healers known as bebelans or catalonans. Some of them are even warriors, like Haraudaya or Queen Urduya, who's a legendary warrior princess and is recognized as a hero. She commanded a fleet and an army of both men and women. She was known for her strength, intelligence, and skill with the kampilan. She famously only vowed to marry a man who could defeat her in a duel, which is kind of badass. But it gets even more matriarchal in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, where clan mothers hold significant power and influence within the social structure. They were the ones responsible for nominating chiefs and hold them accountable, and even had veto powers over their decisions. Their descent is also traced through the mother's line and not the father's, and the children belong to her clan and not his. Women played crucial roles in leadership and diplomacy and even their spiritual life. But then the calendar hits 1565 for the Philippines and somewhere around the 1600s for the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Colonizers take over. In the Philippines, the priestesses that were there, they labeled them witches and heretics to break their influence and replaced them with male priests. The church promoted a strict patriarchal structure where men were dominant in both public and private spheres. Women were taught to emulate the Maria Clara stereotype, which is a demure, passive, and obedient housewife. Women lost all their rights or had severely limited rights in terms of holding property, engaging in business, or handling legal matters independently. And they became legally dependent on husbands and fathers. Their education was also restructured to train women more of just household chores, like sewing and religious roles, rather than the leadership roles they had previously. It was pretty similar in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy as well, where the colonizing authorities found it difficult to negotiate with women, so they just ignored them and then talked to the men warriors and chiefs to sign treaties and stuff. They also, again, of course, forced the European gender roles. Men would act as the heads of the household and the primary political representatives, which directly contradicted the authority of the clan mothers. The colonial policies also pushed women into like the domestic spheres. They got removed from their roles as agricultural producers and economic decision makers. They couldn't even own their own lands. All those lands were given to the male representatives of the house. And again, these are just the few ways that women were oppressed in these two places out of all the different places that this basically happened. But I don't want the conclusion of this video to be that patriarchy is a European thing, like that it's a European virus that has spread all over the world. Because first, it's not entirely true. Patriarchy has been around in different regions outside of Europe. It's just that these colonizing Europeans standardized it all over the fucking globe. And second, Europe had matriarchies, like a lot of them. Oh, I'm feeling another deep dive. So there were a lot of matriarchal societies, or societies where they had somewhat equal rights for men and women across Europe before something happened. There were the Picts from Scotland, who were matrilineal, passing leadership through the mother's line rather than the father's line. And some of the earliest recorded Pictish rulers were women, and their warriors and landowners also included both men and women. And then there were the Etruscans. Don't mind the cat, I'm cat sitting for a friend. This was before the Roman Empire absorbed their culture. The Etruscans practiced gender equality. They revered female deities and had women in positions of power. Their tombs show women eating and speaking and ruling alongside men. There's also the Vincha culture from the Balkans, one of the oldest European civilizations. They had no evidence of kings or warfare or strict gender roles. Their artifacts feature female figures and goddesses and communal living structures. And these are just a few. There are a lot more of these across Europe. That is until the Roman Empire. If you don't know, the Roman Empire was extremely misogynistic, and they had laws like the law of 3 children, which prevented all wealthy freeborn women from accessing their own wealth, their rightful inheritances, until they have 3 children. Marriage contracts were pretty severe. A man's legal control extended over his entire household. And there were, again, countless other oppressive laws. They went crazy with it. But yeah, to put it a bit too simply, the Roman Empire basically influenced or forced all these places to be a bit more patriarchal. So I guess at the end, you could just kind of blame the Roman Empire and be good with it. But no, what I really want to say with this video is that a lot of times people kind of dismiss feminism and equality in general as being a new Western woke thing. But if you go back in time and look at most places, you're gonna find ideas and traces of a better, more just society before some elite, corrupt, powerful men forced it out of them. But they didn't always succeed though.